Hi everyone, it's Chris. Today I have a little watercolor video. I am using my Distress inks to do a little bit of painting. I am using the new Unity Stamps January 19 Kit of the Month. It's called Beautiful Forever and Ever. I'm using my Misty and I have removed the foam mat or my mouse pad so I can accommodate the deeper rubber stamps. And I'm stamping onto Fabriano Artistico watercolor paper. This is a cold press paper, and I'm using Ink on 3's fade out ink so I can do some no line coloring. I'm using my Distress inks. I love using my Distress inks because they are just so much fun to watercolor with, and they're really handy on my desk. They're quick, and most people already have Distress inks, so it's a very economical and simple medium to watercolor with. I've wet my paper and I'm just kind of blocking in some color. I'm going to be having to add quite a few layers to build up the depth of color that I'd like. So I am just starting out by kind of blocking all the shapes of the shape of this room. This is kind of a window seat, kind of a recessed area for where she is sitting looking out the window. So I want to have a little bit of depth created, but with some deeper color right against the window frame and then lighter along the side walls. So it kind of builds a little sense of dimension to the room. Now I'm going to quick heat that or hit that with my heat gun just to dry it a little bit, just so I don't smudge it with my hand. But then I'm going to move on to the girl herself. I'm going to work on just her clothing. This is kind of a nightshirt that she's wearing as she sits looking out the window. So I'm going to bring in some red. This is Candied Apple ink, and I'm just kind of blocking in some of the color just so I have just the shape outlined a little bit. The fade out ink is very light, so I don't want to cover up too much of the lines as I'm working here. So I'm just kind of working in small areas and basically getting the basic shape in first. Now I'm going to let the red dry and I'm going to work on the window frame. So the woodwork, I am going to have that nice and dark so it contrasts with the open window or the window panes. So I'm using gathered twigs. This is a dark brown, and I'm going to put a couple of layers of this dark color to bring in that contrast with the window panes. Now I'm going to go back to her nightshirt, more of the candied apple and a little bit of barn door just to deepen that color. And I'm going to start building the shape, some shadow underneath her arm and along her back, along her thigh. I want to leave kind of the top of her leg kind of highlighted from the light coming in from that window. So I'm going to be building the color from the lower portion of where she's kind of got her legs tucked underneath her. And as that layer dries, then I'm going to go back to my blues. I am bringing in a little bit darker color. I've decided to bring in some faded jeans and just give that depth of color, get a little bit more contrast against those side walls. And I just keep bringing in that color. I have to let it dry just a little bit, and then I can bring another layer of the ink in. And then moving back to another layer of the red, more of the barn door ink, and also a little bit of the fire brick. And you can kind of see that, some dimension is starting to take place. It's going to take probably about 5 or 6 layers to kind of build up the color that I want. Trying to leave a little highlight as if her shirt is kind of wrinkled up where she is sitting and along the edge of where her hands are going to be folded in her lap. Leaving just a little bit of highlight on the edge of her arm just so it doesn't get lost into one big blob of red. So just kind of give a little hint of the shape of her body. I want it darker where her hair is going to be kind of casting that shadow. So I'll let that dry, and then I'm going to go back and deepen my blue even further. There is no real navy blue, so I've added a little bit of gathered twigs to my faded jeans to give me that really dark navy color that I wanted. And it looks really dark right now, but it is going to lighten a little bit as it dries. But this is going to give me that depth of color that I really want. I want the contrast against that window. Now I'm going to bring in a little bit of weathered wood. I'm going to start to create the shape of the pillows just by adding some color to the back edge as if they were in shadow, and then along the edge of the cushion that she's sitting on in the window seat. And a couple layers of this gray will give me that depth that I want with this. And now I'm going to fill in, I am missing a little portion of the wall. So I'm going to go back to my blues and bring that in. And then I have to finish up the rest of the window as well. There's some of that lower frame, but I wanted to make sure that I kind of had my pillows penciled in first. Very quick sketch of colors, and then I can finish off that lower portion of the window. Going back to the gray, I've added just a little bit of brown to the weathered wood, and I'm creating a shadow beneath her body where her legs are tucked underneath her, and that's going to give me a little bit more dimension or hint of shape to the image. And then back to the walnut stain. This is the darker brown. I need another layer and work on filling in the rest of this window frame. And I'm very carefully working with just a water brush. It's a fine tip water brush. And as long as my inks, my layers of each color are dry, I don't have to worry too terribly much about re-wetting and blending these colors together. And that's why I keep kind of skipping around from area to area. It's easier to do with the Distress inks because they're already squished out onto the palette. So all I have to do is clean my water brush, wipe it off on the paper towel, and just keep working from color to color. Going back to her pajamas again, bringing in more of the fired brick, and I've even mixed in just a little bit of brown just to give me that deeper, kind of that very dark burgundy color to give me a little more of the contrast of the shirt and hopefully create more dimension and make it look like there's really a person sitting there. Again, back to the gray, bringing those colors a little bit deeper. They do lighten quite a bit as they're drying. Now I'm going to clean off my palette because I am ready to start working on her skin and her hair. So now I'm going to start with some lighter colors. I'm going to use scattered straw and antique linen and quickly put in some color, just some base color to the hair, and kind of a very light yellowish base coat. So this is the antique linen and then scattered straw on top. And then I'm also going to bring in a little bit of the brushed corduroy just to start building some movement and shape. I want to make it look like her hair is kind of wavy and got that bed head going on. And then I'm using antique linen for her skin tone, and then also bringing in some tea dye and a little bit of the brushed corduroy to create that shape of her legs. I want to leave the top of her thigh and her knee highlighted by the light coming in from the window. So I'm being really careful not to go all the way to the top of the leg, but build up some color to the lower portion, especially of her, shins that are and her feet that are tucked underneath her. And then a little bit same colors with her hands where they are kind of crossed and folded in her lap. Now, the last layers of her hair are dry, so I'm going to bring in deeper colors there. I'm bringing in some gathered twigs now, starting to create more contrast and movement in her hair. And I'm going to bring that color just a little bit higher up on the top because I've got a little bit too much highlight. Now I'm going to put my outdoor scene in. I'm just using gathered twigs. I'm drawing in just a few little random clumps of grass or shrubs out in my snowy yard, and quick drawing in a very very rudimentary tree shape. And this is just the weathered wood. I'm also going to, without re-inking my water brush, put a kind of a distant horizon line out too. I want that really hazy and faded. And then I'm going to come back to my tree and make my little foreground tree just a little bit deeper. I'm going to add just a little bit of water and really kind of fuzz out that background so it looks far away and in the middle of the snowstorm or a windy crappy day like I've got today. So, and then I just brought just a little bit of color to that foreground too. Now I've got the gray out, so I'm just going to touch up the edge of those pillows just one little bit more, just to get a little more dimension to those. And that is about it. No, I guess I have to add a little bit more walnut stain here. This is the deepest of my browns, and that is going to give me kind of those little wispy hairs that kind of are flying, and just a little bit more. So then I just cut it out with my stitched rectangle die and mounted it to a card. The sentiment that I added is from Eve Girl. Thanks for watching.